Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's edition of Daf Yomi. Hope you're doing well today. So I'm going to dive straight in, carry on from the last onward. A probe on the matter of sight without knowledge in case of monetary law. The Gemara relates, Rav Hamnuna was sitting before Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda was sitting and he was raising a dilemma. If one demands payment from another and claims, I counted for you and gave you 100 dinars in the presence of so-and-so and so-and-so, and the witness see him counting the money from outside, what is halacha? Is their testimony accepted? The Eidim Moim also mi b'chutz. If one said to another, I lent you 100 dinars in the presence of so-and-so and so-and-so, and he responds that the incident never happened, and witnesses came and testified that he saw the plaintiff counting money for him, he assumes the presumptive status of one who denies the truth. Even if he later claims that the plaintiff gave him the money as a gift, or was repaying a debt, he is not deemed credible. If he initially admits that the plaintiff counted the money for him, but he claims that the plaintiff gave him the money as a gift, or was repaying a debt, he is deemed credible because his claim does not contradict the testimony of the witnesses. In that case, he takes an oath of inducement and is exempt from payment, according to the opinion of Rabbi Hamnuna. And that's Navav Sefer Nishpotim, Hilchot Ha'olen V'Nitan 6.2, Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat 79.4. Hamnuna said to Rav Yehuda, and what does the other person claim in response to the demand for repayment? If he says these matters never happened, he assumes to be on the status of a denier of the truth, as the witnesses testify that they saw the claimant counting the money and giving it to him. And if he says, yes, I took the money from him, but it is my money that I took, then when the witnesses come and testify that they saw the claimant counting the money and giving it to him, what of it? The testimony of the witnesses does not contradict this claim, as the witnesses do not know the circumstances under which the money changed hands. Rav Yehuda said to him, are you Hamnuna? Enter and come to the study hall as you make your teacher wiser. And the Gemara relates a similar incident. There was a certain individual who said to another, I counted for you and gave you 100 dinars as a loan alongside this column. So what's the footnote? If the plaintiff says to the defendant, I lent you money beside a certain column, and the defendant responds that he never passed that column, and witnesses testify that they saw him pass that column, although they did not see the plaintiff lend the money to the defendant does not assume the presumptive status of one who denies the truth. The reason is that he is considered as one who performed an action that he was not obligated to perform and was of no significance to him. And any matter that is not incumbent upon a person to remember, he performs it, and it is not on his mind. And according to the opinion of Rava, Sefer Nishpotim, Hilchot Tuin V'Nitan 6.4, Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat 79.11, and see the Smada. The other person said to him in response, I did not pass alongside this column. The two witnesses came and testified about him that they saw him, that he urinated alongside this column. Which Lakish said he assumes the presumptive status of a denier of the truth. Now the testimony of the witnesses proved that he passed alongside the column. Rav Nachman objects to this. That is a ruling characteristic of a Persian court, not a reasonable ruling characteristic of a Jewish court. Did the respondent say that he never passed alongside the column? It was that he did not pass alongside the column in the context of this matter that he said to him that he did not pass the column. Therefore, the testimony of the witnesses did not contradict this statement. There are those who say that the incident transpired a bit differently. There was a certain individual who said to another, I counted for you and gave you 100 dinars as a loan alongside this column. The person said to him in response, I never passed alongside this column. Witnesses emerged and testified concerning him that he urinated alongside this column. Rav Nachman said he assumed the presumptive state of the denier of the truth, as the witnesses contradicted his claim. Rava said to Rav Nachman, there is no proof from here that he assumed the presumptive state of a denier, as any matter that is not incumbent upon a person to remember, he performs it and is not on his mind. Therefore, when he denied ever passing alongside the column, it was because there was never a reason for him to remember that he had been there. The Gemara proceeds to cite the opinion cited in the last in the Bride to explain the sort of the halacha that one is liable for taking a false oath of testimony only for a case involving monetary matters. Rabbi Shimon says the Torah rendered one liable if he takes a false oath here with regard to an oath of testimony, and the Torah rendered one liable if he takes a false oath with regard to an oath on a deposit. Just as there, the verse is speaking of liability only in cases involving monetary claims, so to here, the verse is speaking of liability only in cases involving monetary claims. They mock this proof in the West, i.e. Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara asks, what is worthy of mockery in the statement of Rabbi Shimon? The Gemara explains that they mocked that which the Brisa teaches in the continuation, rejecting a fortiori inference suggested by Rabbi Shimon. What is notable about the case of a deposit? It is notable that with regard to a deposit, the Torah did not render the halachic state of one to whom an oath was administered by others like that of one who himself took an oath, as one to whom an oath was administered by others is exempt, and the Torah did not render the halachic state of one who takes an intentional false oath like that of one who takes an unwitting false oath. This rejection is difficult. Now, with regard to the fact that one who administered an oath himself is liable in the case of an oath of testimony, from where is it derived according to Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Shimon derives it by means of a verbal analogy from an oath on a deposit. If so, based on the same verbal analogy, in the case of an oath on a deposit too, let us derive from the case of an oath of testimony the fact that one is liable for a false oath that was administered by others. The Gemara rejects this. And what is worthy of mockery in that statement? Perhaps Rabbi Shimon does not derive that one who takes a false oath of testimony on his own is liable by means of a verbal analogy from an oath on a deposit. Rather, he derives it by means of an a fortiori inference. One is liable for a false oath of testimony administered by others. It is not all the more so that he is liable for an oath that he takes on his own. And the Gemara answers, rather the mockery is with regard to the distinction between an oath on a deposit and an oath of testimony in the matter of whether the halachic statement of one who takes an intentional false oath is like that of one who takes an unwitting false oath, as it teaches in the Brisa. What is notable about the case of a deposit is notable in that with regard to a deposit, the Torah did not render a halachic statement of one to whom an oath was administered by others like that of one who himself took an oath, as one to whom an oath was administered by others is exempt, and the Torah did not render a halachic statement of one who takes an intentional false oath like that of one who takes an unwitting false oath. Now, from where did he would derive that one who takes an intentional false oath of testimony is liable? He derives it as it is not written in the context of an oath of testimony, and it is hidden. Here too, it is not written in the context of an oath on a deposit, and it is hidden. Therefore, there should be no distinction between intentional and unwitting with regard to an oath on a deposit either. Rav Huna said to the sages, and what is worthy of mockery in that statement? Perhaps the fact that the halacha states of one who takes an intentional false oath is not like the one who takes an unwitting false oath in the case of a deposit, and it is from the halachah of misuse of consecrated property that Rabbi Shimon derived it. Just as one is liable to bring guilt offering for the misuse of consecrated property only if he did so unwittingly, one is liable to bring a guilt offering for a false oath on a deposit only if he unwittingly took off the false oath. The Gemara answers, and that is what is worthy of mockery. Instead of deriving the lack of liability for an intentional false oath of a deposit from the case of misuse of consecrated property, let him derive liability for an intentional false oath on a deposit from the case of an oath of testimony. The Gemara rejects this. It stands to reason that he should have derived it from the case of misuse of consecrated property, as that is a derivation of misuse written with regard to an oath on a deposit. If anyone shall sin and commits an act of misuse and dealt falsely with his colleague in the matter of a deposit, Leviticus 5:21, which derived from misuse written with regard to misuse of consecrated property. If anyone commits an act of misuse and sin unwittingly from items consecrated to the Lord in Leviticus 5:15, the Gemara asks, on the contrary, he should have derived it from the case of an oath of testimony, as that is a derivation of shall sin written with regard to an oath on a deposit, which is derived from shall sin written with regard to an oath of testimony. And if anyone shall sin and he hears the voice of an oath, and he is a witness, Leviticus 5:1, the Gemara rejects it. It stands to reason that it is from the case of misuse of consecrated property that he should have derived it, as there are many elements common to an oath on a deposit and misuse of consecrated property represented by the monomic. Misuse with regard to all derived benefit with fixed 1/5 and guilt offering. The term misuse is employed in both cases. Both cases are relevant with regard to all individuals and not only those fit to testify. Both involve one deriving benefit from property that is not his. In both cases, one is liable to bring a fixed guilt offering, as opposed to one who takes a false oath of testimony, who is liable to bring a sliding scale offering. In both cases, one adds 1/5 to the payment of the principal. In both cases, that is the offering with which one gains atonement. The Gemara rejects this. On the contrary, you should have done the halacha with regard to an oath on a deposit from a halacha of oath of testimony, as there are many elements common to both oaths represented by the mnemonic. Sin, ordinary, hediot. What's hediot? From the Greek idiotes, meaning ordinary person or layman, as opposed to an office holder or an expert. The meaning has been expanded to denote one who is illiterate, lacking both intelligence and couth. The term appears in rabbinic literature in these senses, is employed in the Gemara primarily in the sense of a common priest as opposed to a high priest, or in the sense of a consecrated property as opposed to consecrated property. With an oath claim from him, denied his claim, and multiple instances of the term or. The term shall sin is written in both contexts. Both oaths relate to the property of ordinary individuals, not consecrated property. In both cases, there is a claim presented by one of the parties, and denial of that claim by the one taking the oath. Multiple instances of the term or appears in both passages in the Torah. The Gemara responds, these elements common to an oath on a deposit and misuse of consecrated property are more numerous than the elements common to an oath on a deposit and an oath of testimony. Rather, after resolving all the difficulties that were raised against the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, the question remains, why did the sages of Eretz Yisrael find that it is worthy of mockery in that braita? And of Papa Mavon, son of Rabbi Yeshua, came from the study hall of their teacher. They said, this is what is worthy of mockery. Now, since ultimately Rabbi Shimon derives the halacha by means of a verbal analogy, what does that mean? Gezerah shava gomer. Ultimately, Rabbi Shimon derives an oath of testimony from an oath of a deposit by means of a verbal analogy between Shal Sin Leviticus 5:1 and Shal Sin Leviticus 5:21. And based on the hermeneutical principles, there is no partial verbal analogy. This is subject to a dispute between those who discuss the principles of halacha. See Mitzvah Aaron and Yad Malachi. Therefore, he should have completely equated the halacha of an oath of testimony and an oath on a deposit, both in terms of equating the case of one who administers an oath to a case of one who takes an oath, and the case of one who takes a false oath intentionally, and one who takes a false oath unwittingly, between the term shall sin, written with regard to an oath on a deposit, and the term shall sin, written with regard to an oath of testimony. Why is it that he refutes the parallel between them by saying, what is notable about the case of deposit? It is notable in that, with regard to deposit, and Torah did not render the halacha state of one to whom an oath was administered by others like that of one who himself took an oath, as one to whom an oath was administered by others is exempt, and the Torah does not render the halacha state of one who takes an intentional false oath like that of one who takes an unwitting false oath. Rabbi Shimon should have derived by means of an analogy that all the halachot of an oath and all the halachot of an oath on a deposit are identical. The Gemara rejects this. And what is worthy of mockery in that statement? Perhaps when Rabbi Shimon refuted the parallel between the two oaths, it was prior to the verbal analogy being established for him, and the derivation was by means of a paradigm. After the verbal analogy was established for him, he does not refute the parallel and hold that in the case of an oath on a deposit, one is liable to bring a guilt offering for false oath admitted by others, as well as for intentional false oath. The Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Shimon not refute the parallel between the two oaths? Didn't Rabbi Baitai say to the sages, who is the Tana who taught with regard to an oath on a deposit that atonement by means of an offering is not possible for one who takes an intentional false oath? Is Rabbi Shimon. Finally, Rabbi Shimon concludes that there remains a distinction between intentional and unwitting in the case of an oath on a deposit. The Gemara suggests, perhaps with regard to the halachic stage of one who takes an intentional false oath being like that of one who takes an unwitting false oath, Rabbi Shimon refused the parallel between the two oaths, even after the verbal analogy established for him, as he derives the halacha of an oath on a deposit from the halacha of misuse of consecrated property, where there is a distinction between intentional and unwitting, as those elements common to an oath on a deposit and the misuse of consecrated property are more numerous than the elements common to an oath on a deposit and an oath of testimony. But he does not refute the parallel between the two oaths with the claim that there is a distinction between them with regard to whether the halakha state of one to whom an oath was administered by others is like that of one who himself took an oath. Once the verbal analogy is established for him, there is no longer a distinction between the two oaths in that regard. The Gemara asks, If according to Rabbi Shimon, based on a derivation from the misuse of conceded property, one who intentionally takes a false oath on a deposit does not bring a guilt offering like one who took a false oath unwittingly, let the discussion of the case of an oath testimony return to the verbal analogy and derive it from the case of an oath on a deposit that the halachic state of one who takes an intentional false oath is not like that of one who takes an unwitting false oath. Just as in the case of an oath on a deposit, one who takes an unwitting false oath, yes, he is liable to bring a guilt offering, and one who takes an intentional false oath, no, he is not liable. So too in the case of an oath of testimony, one who takes an unwitting false oath, yes, he is liable to bring a sin offering, and one who takes an intentional false oath, no, he is not liable. Just as he derives the case of an oath on a deposit from a case of misuse of conceded property. That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening, and wish you a very good day and a very good week. Shevout Daf.